Welcome back to episode 4 of our Military 101 Explainer series, and a warm welcome to you, Sohraab, again.
Thank you.
And back again to answer some more burning questions that we have. So today's topic will be the different arms and roles in the Indian military. And in this episode, per se, we'll focus on the Indian Army. And in the next episode, we'll also cover the Air Force and the Navy. So Sohraab, again, let's start with the most basic question that you can answer for us. And that's, what are the different arms and roles in the Indian Army per se?
So in the Indian Army, it's divided into 3 types of arms.
Okay.
First is the First are the fighting arms. Next are the supporting arms, and the third are known as the services.
Okay.
So the first is, of course, the fighting arms. So these consist of the armored corps, the infantry, and technically the mechanized infantry, even though it's kind of considered part of the infantry, but they fall in the middle in a way. So those are the 3 or 2, however you view it. Those are the 3 or 2 arms of the fighting part. These are the arms that directly engage with the enemy in combat.
Okay.
And these are the ones that are supposed to actually go in and complete a combat operation.
All right.
Next are the supporting arms. So the supporting arms consist of the Corps of Engineers, the Regiment of Artillery, the Army Aviation Corps, the Corps of Signals, and there are a few others.
Correct.
And these arms essentially support the fighting arms with various machines or various implements in the field of combat. Next are the services, which indirectly support these arms through logistics services. That's why they're known as services. So through logistics or mechanics, for example, with the EME, the electrical and mechanical engineers, and for logistics, the Army Service Corps. So those are the services.
Great.
So those are the 3 groupings of arms, and those are the subgroup, and those are the arms as I mentioned. So the fighting arms, the supporting arms, and the services.
Great. So you mentioned right now the Corps of Engineers actually falls into the support arms, but we've seen in battles. So, for example, in the 1971 war itself, the Corps of Engineers was actually the first one to go in, harm's way. They were actually before the infantry as well. So why are they not given the same kind of significance, although they are actually the first one in the field and the first one in the way of the enemy?
Yeah. That's actually a really interesting question, because usually we view the fighting arms as the ones taking the most casualties.
Correct, yeah.
That's usually the view.
That's the interpretation.
That's usually the image that gets automatically generated in our mind because of what they're known as, the fighting arms. But it's very interesting because the engineers are known as the arm that's first in, last out.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that support the fighting arms most extensively, arguably. I mean, I have some bias because my grandfather was a sapper, But
that's fair to have.
yeah, I mean, but the thing is that these terms aren't based on how many casualties the arms sustain, but rather their role.
Correct.
The role of the engineers is not to engage with the enemy. It's to support the fighting arms and aid them in making the fight easier. So, for example, the Aviation Corps provides support through transport or fire support, and same with the artillery. They provide fire support. They engage indirectly with the enemy, and the same goes for the engineers. So the engineers build infrastructure that is temporary infrastructure that is crucial for the fighting arms movement. So, for example, bridges,
roads, clearing of mines,
exactly, and mining the areas, and explosives, high explosives. So while the engineers sustain a lot of casualties, their role is not to engage with the enemy directly, it's to support the fighting arms. So this connotation, this stereotype that fighting arms sustain the most casualties is actually completely false. And in fact, even among the services, and in fact, according to the statistics of the US Army,
Yeah.
the role that sustains the most amount of casualties isn't the infantry, aren't the engineers, not the pilots, not the armored corps, but rather the truck drivers, the logisticians. So they sustain the most casualties, the services, the ones that aren't even in direct combat.
Correct.
They sustain the most casualties.
Correct.
That goes completely against the stereotype. So yes,
I think it's a difference in the way that we actually interpret these different arms, you know.
Exactly.
As soon as you say services or support, you know, you feel that, okay,
Exactly.
because they're not directly engaging with the enemy,
Exactly.
nothing's going to happen really.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. But I think their role cannot be undermined, you know. We
Definitely.
tend to do that. I
Yeah.
think that's just, again, that's a matter of
Definitely.
stereotype that we have. So, Sohraab, very interesting thing that you explained over here, you know, regarding the fact that the support and services arm are equally critical, maybe even more critical at times. So, what about the training of these arms? I mean, although they are not intended to fight directly with the army, but are they given some sort of training because they are going to be in harm's way? They are the first ones to take action. So, is there any difference in the training provided as well?
Well, of course, these are specialities. These are special, sophisticated roles that each arm plays. Other than the infantry, other than fighting itself, there are many specific roles that, say, the engineers have to fulfill. So, usually officers of the Corps of Engineers, they usually hold some degree in engineering technology.
Right. Of course. Of course.
So they are usually trained in the sciences and in developing new.
But are they also given training to kind of
Yes.
ensure that?
They are given combat training.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, even bandsmen and cooks are given
wow.
training. Basic training like training with rifles and whatnot. So all of them are expected to have training, have combat training. And these roles are actually additions. So in a way, I mean, the engineers or the supporting arm and the services, they're actually more specialized and in a lot of cases more qualified than the infantry or the armored corps. So
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Any incident or any time of war or battle where these services or, you know, say support arms have actually played a more important role than the infantry? Anything that you can recall where this happened?
definitely. I mean, first of all, the 1971 war, as you mentioned, the landscape and the terrain of Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, is mainly swamps and marshes.
Correct.
So, for the armored corps to actually move through this landscape would be extremely difficult. But thankfully, the engineers, they were there to provide support for the armored corps and even the infantry through building crucial infrastructure that helped them in that movement, facilitated their movement in actually reaching Dhaka. And as well as, of course, the helicopters as part of the aviation.
Yeah.
As part of the aviation element of the armed forces, that helped significantly. For example, the airlifts, the various airlifts that were conducted. So there are a lot of cases where, of course, I mean, in almost every case, in almost every military operation, these supporting arms and the services play a crucial role in carrying them out.
I think the 71 war also, we say that it started in December, but actually all of them were there far before that, you know. The
Yes.
engineers were there before that. They were actually the last ones to leave, you know.
Definitely.
And that's why we also call it the Sappers War for that reason,
Yeah.
because of their role. That's very interesting, Sohraab. Great things that you've pointed out over here. And my next question is pertaining to the role of women in these arms. So can you shed light on where they are actively a part of and what they are not actively a part of yet?
Yeah, so as of now, the women officers and the women personnel are only being inducted into the supporting and the supporting arms and the services.
Okay.
As of now, they haven't been inducted into the fighting arms, but it is expected that in the future they will be. Although, of course, they are in direct combat roles in the CAPFs, in the paramilitaries, in the CRPF, in the CISF, ITBP as well. So, as of now, women cannot join the infantry or the armored corps or the mechanized infantry, but that is being worked on.
Great, great, fantastic. So thank you, Sohraab, for answering some of these questions. And we'll, of course, cover the Air Force and the Navy in the next episode. So we look forward to that. Thank you.